Namaste, Mr. Eric Solheim.
Namaste.
Eric
Yes,
Solheim.
absolutely. You're perfect in Norwegian language.
I'm a broadcaster. So I usually pronounce words.
Just call me Eric. Solheim means the home of the sun. It's a farmer's name from Norway.
I see. I'll call you Eric.
That's good.
Vijay.
Thank you.
By some strange karma, I'm sharing room with you. Eric, let's start with, do you believe in karma?
I mainly believe in humans' ability to take destiny in their own hands and change the world, but you cannot do it without luck, and karma may bring you luck. And so I believe in karma, but not as something coming from outside, but from yourself, from inside, from changing things.
Do you think life is a decision or a destiny? Or both?
It's definitely both, but I really believe that the gods tend to help more those people who help themselves. So people, if we try to do something to improve our livelihood, improve the world, we tend to be more helped by the gods.
I'm not pretty sure about that,
No, please.
You have come here for Sagam Sambat.
Sure.
Sometime when I think, and when I look at the Nepalese mountains and the glaciers melting, Himalayas becoming darker and darker every day. And it's not our fault. It's not fault of the Nepalese people or Nepal. It's because of some other countries that we are suffering, So without karma, who is to be responsible for this?
This issue is very simple. The main responsibility for the problems in the mountains of Nepal rests with, number one, the United States of America. Add Europe, Japan, and a few other developed countries. They are the nations which have made this havoc of climate change, which so unfortunately is affecting poor people, nomads, people in the mountains of Nepal, which has done nothing to cause the problem.
You have skipped China and India in this?
Because per capita there is much, much less. I mean, the United States emissions per capita up to today are 8 times the Chinese, 25 times Indians. You need to reckon every individual human being on planet Earth as the same. So indeed, Europe and America is much more to be blamed than, say, India or China.
It's quite unfair on Nepal, right?
It's absolutely unfair, but unfortunately the world is not a fair place. Sometimes people are affected by actions of others, or of course by actions of God, earthquakes or storms or flooding, which are not their fault, and still we have to cope with it.
If we go by my karmic theory, maybe Nepal or us, in the past incarnation of Earth, this Earth has been created many, many times and destroyed many, many times. Do you believe? Or this was the first and the last time this Earth was created?
I very much believe in the old perspectives of the people at this subcontinent, which are there in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and all the other religions, and that is human being is part of nature. The concept which came in the West that we humans are far above nature. We can do whatever we want to do. We can kill animals at our will. We can destroy the forest or the beauty of the nature just at our will. That is the false perspective, the old subcontinent perspective. Humans are part of nature. Indeed, nature is God. Look in Hinduism, Ganesh, half animal, half elephant, half human, Hanuman, half monkey, half human. Can there be a stronger symbol?
Or Matsagandha, half fish, half lady,
Exactly.
No, my question to you was, maybe in our past karmic life, Nepal has done something bad, so that we are suffering?
No, I don't feel that. I don't buy for a second.
Okay.
This beautiful nation, no, absolutely not.
Okay. I was just trying to send you a teaser.
It's a great teaser.
But the one question remains still valid. At the moment when we talk about the damages that are going on Earth, Mother Nature, by human beings, maybe nature is just responding to what we have done. Till that point, we are clear.
That perspective, I think, is absolutely right. I mean, God, whether it's the Christian or the Muslim or whether it's Shiva, whatever is the God, is furious because we humans have caused so much havoc to the beauty of nature, which God created. We should respect that nature. We should be part of that nature. And then God will be much more happy and he will not respond by causing climate change.
Do you believe in God like me?
I don't really believe in God in the sense of any kind of person sitting out there.
No.
But I believe that humans can take the destiny in their own hand. And I believe in the unity of humans by nature. And that's what I see as the true religion.
Maybe we can say that the nature is God itself?
Nature is God. Every historic religion started there. They venerated nature, as I said, with, of course, Hinduism, but it's all over also in many early religions. People were venerating they were venerating trees, animals, rivers. The Ganga is the holy river. Why? Well, because you venerate nature.
Do you believe in a power greater than human beings?
Yeah, that's a very good question, but again, I tend to believe that we humans are in charge of our destiny, and we should focus on that.
I don't agree with you. Humans have limitations.
Absolutely. No, sure.
A very basic idea or a basic philosophy that human can take charge of everything. I don't believe that.
But look, the universe...
We can try to believe. You can try to take things in hand.
What I really believe in the perspective that we are seeking, we are seekers. I was really put on that concept by the great Indian guru, Sadhguru. I asked him once and he said, we must be seekers. The universe is enormous. The planet is big, even India, even Nepal. It's enormous. How can I understand everything? I go from one village to the other. There are new differences, always something to learn. Let's be seeking for the truth. Let's not believe that we have found the truth.
There I agree. When people ask me, who are you? I'm always at loss what to tell him, a journalist or a writer or a filmmaker. Actually, I consider myself a seeker. That's But Eric, still I'm not very sure how much is in the hand of human beings. I think that human beings are exaggerating their control over the totality of the picture, Do I make some sense?
No, that's of course absolutely true. Look, because the planet existed long before the universe, long before humans, and in all likelihood, it will exist long after the last human is left the planet. And climate change is not a threat to the planet.
We will continue this esoteric, you call it, right? Part of conversation for some other time.
Okay.
Let's come back to some basics. You are a familiar name in Nepal.
Okay.
I had heard it long way back. But somehow my karma was to meet you only today.
So good to meet you today.
Pleasure meeting you, Eric. First time I heard your name was during the peace process. I have heard your name twice. In some sort of a peace process in two countries in Asia, not one. Sri Lanka and Nepal. I lived Sri Lanka for a while, for some other time. When you look back, what do you feel now?
When it comes to Nepal, I feel the peace process was an astonishing success. There's just one way of judging a peace process. Does it bring peace? Does it bring lasting peace? Does it bring the nation to a point where no one thinks it will go back to war? That's exactly what happened in Nepal. I've never met one Nepali who think, next week we'll go back to a people's war in this country. It's settled, it's peace, and that's the purpose of the peace process. And of course, what we did not achieve in Sri Lanka was exactly what the Nepalese did achieve here.
What was so special about us that happened here and could not happen in Sri Lanka?
I think it was the ability to compromise. At the end of the day, this was, of course, at the time of the monarchy, the three main political forces, the Maoist, the UML, and the Congress, they all decided, let's make peace and let's move on to developing this enormously interesting, fascinating, beautiful country. And they were ready for compromise. What lacked in Sri Lanka was the ability to compromise. People want 100% for themselves. And if I want 100% for me, you want 100% for you, well, there is no compromise.
When we talk about ability to compromise, at least in Nepali case, to what level the foreign powers were responsible for bringing peace in Nepal or forcing peace in Nepal?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean,
or suggesting...
foreign powers, and in particular India, helped, that for sure. India played a key role in helping Nepal, and of course both China and the United States and all others also favored peace in Nepal. But at the end of the day, it's the local forces. No one could have implemented peace there unless the key actors in Nepal wanted peace. So we should not give the credit to someone else. Nepalists brought peace to Nepal, but true, with support in particular from India.
I would like to talk to you in detail about the peace processes some other time. This is the first time I'm meeting, and you are in a rush today. I won't hold you back. But this is something for the sake of setting the record straight, not for the blame games. I would like to have some other opportunities to talk with you on this issue.
Very happy to dig into their successes and failures and what worked in Sri Lanka, what worked in Nepal, and what other nations potentially can learn from Nepal.
If you have to say it in one word, you are saying it was our ability to compromise. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And some people speak negatively about compromise. But look, even in the smallest unit, if there's no compromise in a family, you want to decide everything for your wife, your children, everything. You will want to decide what you will have for dinner tonight, what entertainment you will have, what you will do for holiday, where you will live. You want to decide everything. It's a disaster. And that applies to nations and to the international community. Compromise is a wonderful, beautiful world. We cannot work without compromise. And that was what the Nepalese did understand. And unfortunately, some other nations don't understand.
There can be two kinds of compromises, Eric. Compromise by forced compromise, or voluntary compromising.
Nepal clearly was a voluntary compromise. The main forces decided we want a compromise, and then it happened.
Even assuming it for a second that it was a forced compromise, I think it's better to live in a peace with forced compromise better than the fighting, right?
But there are very, very, very rarely a forced compromise, because even the most powerful nations, like, say, the United States of America, has been completely unsuccessful when they tried to force something. I mean, the United States couldn't even win the war in Afghanistan. Some people with young guys from the villages of Kandahar and Helmand with long beards were able to win the war with America, the most powerful, most high-tech nation in the world. So there is very big limits to what anyone can force upon any nation. The compromise, and unfortunately also the wars, come from within mainly.
I think it's high time that human race enjoys and takes pride in compromise, right? In the term called compromise.
Absolutely.
Is forced compromise or dead peace a good thing?
Peace is nearly always a good thing, because look, if there is violence in the society, it overtakes everything. Security is number one for human beings. Secondly comes food, then comes education and health and other issues, but security is number one. So let's keep peace.
At any cost?
At nearly any cost.
At nearly any cost.
Yeah, at
nearly is you need to add, right?
Yeah.
At nearly every.
Because there cannot be peace with enormous suppression, where people have no rights. I mean, of course, in some societies has been so repressive that the right to rebellion is there. I mean, in the old Chinese concept, it was like the emperor has the mandate of heaven. But if the emperor cannot represent the mandate of heaven. If there are huge disasters, say hungers or floods or major disasters, well, then the emperor does not have the mandate of heaven, so we also have the right to rebellion.
During the time of Maoist insurgency, a senior Maoist leader told me during a soft hour conversation was that there comes a time in nation's history when you have to decide whether you want to accept the status quo or use force to change the things. What is your view on this?
My view is that in most cases, you will be much more successful if you try a more gradual approach to change. I mean, in Sri Lanka, where I was very deeply involved, of course, many Tamils felt suppressed. They felt they didn't have the rights. And they decided at the end, they tried for some time peaceful means, and then they went violent. But probably without the war, Tamil rights in Sri Lanka would have been better rooted today than it was after all this bloodshed.
That reminds me of one incident with Mahatma Gandhi, when he was fighting for India's freedom struggle by non-violent methods. A group of people went to him and told him that, Mahatma, you are all the time talking about using non-violent methods to achieve the freedom. Look at Africa. In some countries, those people used force and they achieved the results quickly. Mahatma took a deep breath and politely told them that with the ease and pace they have acquired the freedom, with the same ease and pace they will lose it too. It will not last,
But look, let's also be honest. I mean, the Indian freedom struggle was the enormously broad, non-violent movement led by Gandhi, but it was also military attacks by the young Marxist Bhagat Singh or by Mr. Bose, who got the support from the Japanese. There were many other parts of the struggle, which may also have helped to make the case to the Brits that it's time for peace. And I may also add one other element. To try to make a non-violent struggle against Hitler would probably been impossible. The Brits were horrible, but they were not as horrible as the Germans. And against Hitler, would simply have put...
That reminds me of...
He would have killed off Mahatma Gandhi any day.
Yeah. A lot of people say that, Yeah. Mahatma Gandhi was facing British, not Germans,
Absolutely. The Brits, I mean, let's be fair. The Brits were absolutely horrible. They were having wars at every continent, in the Caribbean, in Africa, in India, everywhere. They were killing tens of millions of people through hungers and violence. But still, they were not acting in exactly the same, even worse way as the Nazis.
Yeah. That reminds me, people from the Maoist camp or the seven-party camp these days arguing with each other that who was more responsible for the changes, So both sides have their own story. Actually, it's a composite view. We will talk about this some other time. But this subject fascinates me, about this violence, self-defense. I was talking to Jet Li and Mingyur Rinpoche at one point, and I asked him that, what is the difference between violence, self-defense, and aggression? These are complicated questions. But bottom line, which you are saying is compromise is a good word. And we are at least the situation today is much better, The young generation in Nepal forgets the kind of situation we were having during the Maoist insurgency.
And to the credit of the Maoists, they fought this war, but they understood at the end of the day that they could not win a total military victory, so they came back to negotiate. A very good example of the same is Michael Collins, founding father of Ireland. He was a fantastic assassin of Brits. I mean, he killed Brits in a more intelligent way than probably any other person in the world. But he also understood that he could not defeat the British Empire by violence. So at the end, he came to the talk, and he forced a peace with the Brits. That's what we should recommend to militant groups. Yes, you may have embarked upon violence, but understand that if you want to win, you can only win through peace.
Compromise is an interesting word, right? I'll think about it a lot.
It's a very important word.
Yeah. Whether in relation between the nations or society or two individuals, right? Any day. But still people try and the nations try, winner take all. But somehow, I will go by your theory.
Look to the major wars of today. No one really believed that Russia can crush Ukraine. No one really believed that Ukraine can throw out the Russians. Well, there must be a compromise. And the Arabs and the Israelis have been fighting for many, many decades. Can only work on a compromise where there is a Jewish state and a Palestinian state, and can go on with all the other conflicts. Only a compromise can really solve the problems.
Why doesn't the human beings, whether individuals or nations, realize that they can't win all? Still they keep on fighting. Still the Ukraine and the Russians are fighting. Still the Palestinians and Israelis are fighting.
Very often because, again, people believe that they need to get everything. 100% victory. But if I want 100% for myself, there is nothing for you, and there will be endless war. But of course, throughout history, there are also examples of long-lasting peaces where people understood that the benefit of peace are larger. Let's go for that.
Okay, let's come back to Nepal. Right now, we are seeing a kind of the rightist group or the RPP are also saying that we should also have a share in this system. Do you have any comment on that? They're asking for the restoration of the monarchy, or
on these matters, I leave it completely to Nepal. I mean, we have a very, very well-working monarchy in Norway. Our Finnish friends is a very well-working republican system. Both can work. What cannot work is, of course, the old-style totalitarian monarchy, which was sometime in Nepal. But where there's a constitutional monarchy or a republic, both works well in different nations of the world.
Do you have any suggestion or idea about Nepal, or you would like to skip the question?
I really don't want to run around giving advice to every other nation, because every nation needs to find their own way and they know better. And I think this has been the huge mistake of particularly Americans in the last decades. They think they can sit in Washington and decide what the Nepalese or Sri Lankans or any other nation should do. No. The less interference from abroad, normally the better.
Now it looks like they should advise themselves.
With Trump, this has caused going in a completely different direction. I'm not a big fan of Trump on most other areas, but here is spot on. He just went to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia and told the Arabs that when you are in charge of your own development, as we see now in Saudi Arabia or in the Emirates or in Qatar, you do very well. When we Americans tried to impose our system to the Middle East, it was a complete disaster. On this matter, he is spot on.
Yeah, me too. I'm not a great fan of Trump, but there are certain things which he has done are amazing. Like there was so much of a dust under the carpet in the name of fake liberals and the fake progressives. I would rather like to deal with a authentic conservative rather than a fake liberal or a fake progressive.
What was a big mistake from the United States was to kind of have a horse in the race in every country. You are Americans. You should not prefer this or that politician in another nation. Here, the United States should learn from the two main nations in the global south, China and India. They don't have horses in all other races. They work with whoever is in the government and mainly with all political forces everywhere. And America should do the same.
Talking about China, our northern neighbor, our friendly nation, what separates them, in your opinion, vis-a-vis American foreign policy?
This is a very key element, the non-interference in the affairs of other nations. I mean, China defend their own interest. Sometimes I think also they should be a little more flexible in the dealings with other nations, and they can be a little bit more compromise-oriented. But China is defending its own interest, which is fine. They do not subscribe to some solution for every other nation. But of course, I mean, at the core of all is that China, the history of China is 10 times longer than the history of the United States of America. Population is 4 times longer. It's a completely different place. It's time for the United States to respect China, but of course for China also to respect the United States.
Now, while almost agreeing with you. There is a small addition I would like to make. We still need to wait for China. China is just arriving on the forefront, at least in this era right now. We still need to see how they behave in years to come. It's too early. They are
No, look, I spoke at a conference in Shanghai and I made the argument that China has not been into any war since 1978, 79, which is absolutely remarkable. There's never been such a peaceful rising power in any point in human history like China. And the guy said, yes, but is that because this is in the DNA of the Chinese or in the history of the Chinese? Or it's simply because they're waiting for the time when they are more powerful and with more accurate weapons? Of course, only the future can answer this question. But overall, I believe that China, but indeed also South Asia and India, have a more peaceful history when it comes to outside aggression. There have been horrible wars inside China, but China has historically been not aggressive to the rest of the world, but nor has India.
Though there has been trouble within the country, in India,
absolutely, but they have not been aggressive outside their own borders. I mean, China historically, of course, they had neighbors in Korea and Vietnam. There have been some small conflicts there, but overall, China was so big in itself. The Chinese name of China is the Central Kingdom because they saw themselves as the center of the world, and they were not really bothered with the rest.
Again, I would like to take you back to that beautiful word called compromise.
Yeah.
Compromise is a little bit hurting for the ego, but at the end of the day, it's good, right?
Yeah, that's my view. Exactly.
This is a good one. Let's talk about the climate, where this conference is taking downstairs.
Yeah.
What do you think about these conferences that take place in the name of climate? I'll be very honest and frank with you, as I'm usually are with everybody. There was a time not very long ago, I used to think that this climate issue is just few, people talking in nice hotels, talking big and nothing to do with my life, Till few years back when the water stopped coming to my tap, we have a well in our house. Then I started looking at this issue of climate, I want your frank opinion, Eric. You seem to be a frank person till now, whether one agrees with you or no. To what level these conferences like this we are having, Sagarmatha Samvad, helpful in actualizing the things into reality, not in terms of idea?
I think conferences like this are important, but overall my view is that the world will not be saved by diplomacy when it comes to climate. What's saving the world when it comes to climate is business. Because now the price of solar energy has fallen by 90%. Electric cars are available all over the world. So if you ask me at the core who will save the world, well, that is Tongwei and Longi, those are the biggest Chinese solar companies. It's BYD and CATL are the biggest Chinese companies in the electric battery and electric car sphere, and they're all over the place here in Kathmandu also. And it's the Adanis and the Tatas, the big companies in India, which are also going green at high speed. Look, last year, China added 300 gigawatt of solar energy to the grid. Well, that is 100 times the entire hydropower of Nepal. So it's enormous. It's the forces of business. I mean, governments need to regulate markets for this to happen. But it's the forces of business which will save the world when it comes to climate.
Very important, This made sense to me also. I could never understand how come these talks alone would save the issues like climate. It's not the diplomacy, it's the business that will save.
Absolutely. That's my view. Because in climate talks, they tend to be focused on very minor issues with no relevance to the world. For example, there was a big dispute. Shall we phase down coal or shall we phase out coal? It has no impact on any human being.
So it is more meaningful to organize a conference. How to promote the solar business? Probably that will be more beneficial.
Last year, within 1 week, I attended 2 big conferences. One was the climate conference in Baku in Azerbaijan. The other was the conference of all the Chinese solar companies in Chengdu, hosted by Tongwei, which is the biggest solar company in China. The latter one was the most consequential because they have brought down the price of solar so much. Look, this one company, Tongwei, that would have been the 5th largest producer of renewable energy in the world if it was not a company, but it was a nation, not a company. So it's enormous impact. But in the climate talks, diplomats are trying to get some small changes in the wording, which really don't impact the world outside. They are building the solar panels in the real world, which is much more important. I mean, look, just in the state of Gujarat in India, I mean, India will use Chinese solar panels to make an enormous 30 gigawatt solar and wind park by Mr. Adani. The entire state of Gujarat will make 100 gigawatt. This is a huge number, but it's business focused.
So we can safely say that the conferences like these, nothing sinister about them, but rituals which won't harm us or maybe help us a little bit, but not consequential.
They are only consequential if they end up with political leaders and business leaders making new and better decisions.
Okay, talking about these political leaders, please try to educate me. One thing I don't understand about this climate thing, seminars, is climate is a trans-border issue, right? It is.
Absolutely.
It has no it doesn't care where does the political border of India or the China starts or ends or America.
Sure.
But the decisions are taken by the politician. How come somebody whose interests are confined to his or her geographical boundaries take decisions about a trans-border issue,
Mm-hmm.
Or to what level of authenticity or honesty or integrity that person would be able to take the decision?
But the main leaders of the world, like President Xi Jinping of China or Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, they are of course engaged in climate, not for the world, mainly for their own nation, because they know, and Prime Minister Modi knows very well that climate change will impact people in India. Okay. And he also knows very well that it's a huge opportunity for growing the business, getting solar panels, getting pump storage in the rivers, getting wind power. So Prime Minister Modi sees this as an opportunity for India and a threat to India. And that's why he's engaged. If you look to his behavior, he very rarely go to international conferences and spend his time on that. He don't normally speak about the missions. He don't even speak about the problems of climate change. He speak about how can I help India get everyone out of poverty, grow a huge middle class, make India shine on the international scene by doing it by combining ecology and economy.
Okay. Can you combine economy and the ecology at the same time? What Prime Minister Modi or the Indian leaders are also saying is that the Western powers, which have already polluted the world at some given juncture of human history, like United States and Europe, now they can't come and lecture us, you don't do this. You have already done it, Mm-hmm. So can economy and ecology go together?
Absolutely, but that's new. In the past, it couldn't, because, at the time of the Industrial Revolution, it happened in the UK, and one reason was they had abundance of coal. And for 200 years, every nation who wanted to really grow its economy needed to do it based on coal and then on oil. It happened in Europe, in America, in Japan, in China, everywhere. But now, price of solar is much lower than coal. So if you switch to solar, you save money. So for the first time in human history, a different development path is possible based on renewables.
If you have to name one single factor that has become a game changer, it is going to be solar energy?
The number one factor is the price of solar energy. Price, because people are not going into solar, all of them, because they love the environment, and some of them may not even be interested in climate, but they go into solar because it's the cheapest available energy.
It's all about the business at the end of the day.
A business is about business. But that's of course what makes this complete new pathway possible. I was just in the Indian state of UP, which is a pure part of India, and people running small green mills there. In the past, they had paid 40,000 Indian rupees for diesel. Now they pay 15,000 Indian rupees for solar. Of course, they love that. They save a lot of money, which they can use for education for the children or growing their business.
Business sometimes can be poisonous also. If I'm thirsty and if there is a water, but if the water is poisonous, sometimes I don't even check whether the water is poisonous or no. I just drink it,
That was what we did in the past because every nation wanted prosperity, and the only way to prosperity was coal. That's why we all embraced coal. I mean, people were not stupid. They knew that coal was bad for the environment. They knew it was bad for the health. I mean, everyone inhaling coal understand that that's bad for you. But it was the only way to prosperity, and that's why we did it. Now we have the other way.
Eric, you have been in politics. I was checking your CV.
Yeah.
Politics. You have been a minister for quite some time, right?
Yeah.
And now you are in a different kind of a politics, climate politics. You have seen your bandwidth is very interesting. From politics to climate politics, can you describe your journey, what you have learned in 1, 2, 3? Not everything, just...
Maybe to focus on the big picture. When we go to these climate conferences and any number of conferences, people tend to be focusing on very small issues, and they tend to believe it's also you need to get finance for everything. While it's the big picture, the decisions made by political leaders and businesses are changing the world, and at the end of the day, in this era, it's business which will help us save the climate. And I came from a socialist background in Norway. We were very critical to business. We basically thought that business will destroy our lives. But while, of course, business have created a lot of havoc, for sure, but overall, business is an enormous potential force for better life for people.
You were socialist?
I'm still socialist in the sense that I believe we should have a much fairer society, but I'm not socialist in the sense that I believe that it's good that government is running everything.
Okay. There is a saying that if you are not a socialist before you are 25, then you are an idiot. And if you are still a socialist after 35 or 40, you are again an idiot. Do you agree?
I don't agree to that because I believe we should keep these absolutely core human values of fairness. When you see that, and of course, what we now...
No, I take back my word. I forgot that I was talking to a Norwegian socialist. You are a real one, not the fake one like ours.
But if there is one area where I have changed my view, it's on the role of business. I see business as an enormous potential force for good.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, if we can generate goodness inside the business people, that's amazing power.
It helps if business leaders have good karma, good values, but otherwise governments need to regulate business to avoid what we don't want. It's not like a business leader can do what he or she exactly wants, then governments need to regulate. And just maybe the most important area for the future now, we need to regulate artificial intelligence. It have enormous potential opportunities for good for people, but it can also be used to spread fake news for terrorists, for crimes and wars, and we must regulate that.
In a country like Nepal, where the privatization is a recent phenomenon and all businessmen are not fair, quite a few of them are not fair. So what do you think? Is it better to have the privatization in a country without having a strong regulatory agency?
If you ask yes or no, I would say yes, because without private sector, no nation is really able to develop. And in most nations, there is more corruption in the public sector. People who are giving out licenses.
Is it okay to have a little bit of corruption as long as the government is functioning, rather than the government which is corrupt and non-functioning? What would you choose?
I will for sure choose a little bit of corruption because look, every nation who has developed fast, in Europe, it's not that we had no corruption. It's not that there has been no corruption in China. There has been corruption. But because it has not been the horrible corruption which you see in some nations where they make just the leaders rich and nothing for the rest of the people.
Yeah, beautifully said. There are three types of equations. Number one, a country where little bit of corruption, but efficiency is also there. Another kind of country where there is corruption but no efficiency. And another is lot of corruption, lot of efficiency. Another is all corruption and zero efficiency.
Because the worst sort of corruption is when it leads to the completely wrong decision. I mean, you have a good offer of business, I have a bad offer, my solutions are bad, but I get the license because I pay someone. Then, of course, it leads to very poor economic development and bad decisions. That's the worst sort of corruption. And of course, no society can...
I think inefficiency is also a corruption.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely.
People often forget that while, as if... I don't believe that...
But I mean, look, if you need to go around to 15 different ministries and give something to every minister or every civil servant to get a contract, it's extremely inefficient. Nothing will happen, and an enormous waste of resources. And at the end of the day, the bill is paid by the poor people and the average working man or woman of that nation.
Yeah.
They pay the bill.
Yeah. Compared to that, you have to go to 15 different places to spend like this. Is it better, or you go to one place and pay that man and then it is okay? Out of these, which one you will choose? I will choose the first one.
I will choose wherever there is efficiency to help people. Yeah.
How many times you have been here?
To Nepal?
Yeah.
I think maybe 12, 15 times. During the peace process, I came very often.
When was the first time you came to Nepal? Do you remember the year?
I don't remember exact year, but I remember what happened because Madhav Nepal, who at the time was the leader of the UML party, he called me and said, look, you are so successful in the peace process in Sri Lanka, can you come and help in Nepal? Okay. Later, because Sri Lanka peace process was complete failure, while Nepal was very successful. Then we started, based on, I met him in different places in Europe and other places, and we started also reaching out to Prashandra and the Maoists when they were still out in the bush. So I related to Nepal before I came here myself.
All time you have come here, all the time for work? No pleasure?
There is always pleasure to be in Nepal. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful places on earth, and with wonderful food and great people. There's always a pleasure, but I have focused on work, yes.
Yeah. I won't hold you long, you have to go. But thank you for sharing that importance of the word called compromise, I often forgot how things were here during the Maoist insurgency, And it feels good that in Nepal we were able to bring peace here, right? I think new generation takes this for granted,
Nepal should be very, very proud of the peace process. It's a major achievement, and I agree, young people will not remember it. And if there's one word which stands out, let's celebrate that wonderful, beautiful word, compromise.
Compromise. In every generation, this word is as valid as it was, in all walks of life, right?
Because there will always be new issues where you need to find a compromise.
Yeah. How do you feel from being a full-time politician to where you have landed in life?
Well, I'm working all the time, so I'm happy.
What are the three most important things for you in life?
Number one, at the end of the day, is my wife and my 4 children. And then secondly is the work, and then peace and environment. And thirdly, reading books.
Good. What kind of books do you read?
History. Nearly always history.
What does history tell you? People here think that history is a useless subject. In Nepal, if you go to Tribhuvan University, there are less students than the teachers of history in the university, We think that it is, I don't agree with that view, but in your opinion, since you read history, what we can get by reading history?
The answer to your question, because people don't understand that at the end of the day, it's the bigger forces of the life outside which define their life. If for some reason some people want to go back to war in Nepal, well, it will impact the life of all the students which are there now believing that history is not important. And if there's one lesson from history, is how these huge movements of political leaders mainly, but also on others, impact on the life of every individual. wonderful, but also enormously moving. For instance, to read how Chinese people who were at the crossroads of major changes in Chinese history when millions were killed, how they experienced the life and how they struggled during these times. And it tells you, let's not go back there.
There is a saying that history repeats itself, and there is another saying that says that the history does not repeat itself. We repeat the mistakes and say that history is repeating itself. Do you have any comment?
History is never repeating itself because it's completely depending on individuals. But that doesn't mean that we cannot get a lot of knowledge. And some people say history doesn't repeat itself, but it's rhyming. Yes, we can learn a lot from the past, but individuals decide, so it's not repeating itself.
There's another saying in Mahabharata, whatever has happened in Mahabharata, nothing is happening in the world that has not happened in Mahabharata. All those 5 things,
No, if you look at the big picture of things, all is the same, because, the main forces of people's life, love, ambition, hate, egoism, but still the ability to help others, all these have been the same for thousands of years. Human being at the end of the day is a species in nature with some DNA which is not changing fast.
So can we say that we are repeating this karma of those 5 elements?
Yes, that we can say. Absolutely.
Good. You still believe... One last thing, I would like to give you a second chance. Do you believe in destiny or decision?
Again, I believe in making the right important decisions, but you cannot do that in a vacuum. At the end of the day, you do it in a framework which is decided by destiny or by tradition or history and your knowledge. It may be a too complicated answer, but if we can always make decisions, even if we have a destiny.
Okay, compromise was one word, and please tell me the importance. What do you think about limitation? I think that the word called limitation is also very, very important. We all must understand very deeply our limitations as a human being, as a nation.
Again, that's very important. That's why where we started also with the humans as a part of nature. That's one very, very obvious limitation. But another limitation is I can, at the end of the day, only be successful if the wider society is successful. If you are the one successful person in a place where everyone else is dying, having unhappy lives, you are not successful. So there are limits to what we can do, and the main limitations is one, nature, and the 2 other human beings.
One thing that's stuck to my mind after this conversation with you is that if we want to actualize the thing, it will be the decisions of the business, it will be a business decision rather than the decisions of the diplomat and the people collected here, right? Is that correct?
It's correct, but business can only work when political leaders give the direction and frame the market. Otherwise, they cannot work. And unless there is a stable market, no business can be successful. And unless there is a direction, that's again, I still believe that President Xi and Prime Minister Modi are the 2 most consequential environment politicians of our age. That's because they give the direction for the nation, but then they leave it to the Adanis and the BYDs to find the technology and the way forward.
In old time, politicians were leading the business people. Has it changed now? Is the business people leading the politicians, or the business has become more detrimental than it was? Business is in the driving seat, if I say so?
Because if you take the long view of history, of course, because in most of history, business was not consequential. There were food traders. 90% in every society were farmers. And in most societies, merchants and business have a very low status in society. What's really mattered was to own a lot of land and to be a political and military leader. So in that sense, of course, business is much, much more consequential over time.
Now,
Yes.
We are in a business era.
Compared to most of history, absolutely yes.
I should have met you earlier. We'll see you again next time you are here.
Okay.
And you have a pleasant trip back.
Thank you.
And lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.